with Tania and Nette. Hello, Tania.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. It's exciting to be back again. Um,
Yes.
we were just starting to talk off camera, and we decided to get straight into the podcast. So you were saying you were listening to our podcast on your way home from work.
Yeah, so there's this relationship podcast that I listen to and from work, or I will listen to an audiobook. But right now I'm listening to this podcast. It's called This Changes Everything, and it's wonderful. And then I was like, oh, I'm gonna start listening to our podcast, which sometimes I listen to it and I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. And then other times I'm like, I'm an idiot. I can't believe anybody's like letting me actually on the air. So anyway, so I'm listening to it, and there was a couple things that we would mention and say, oh, we'll talk about that in a different podcast or whatever. And same experience that we talked about in the last podcast, where I thought of something and then I was like, Spirit, what do you think? And not really a response. So I was like, okay, well, let's wait and see sort of what they think. And I was actually going to message you, but I decided not to, with whatever the topic was. And for the life of me, I cannot remember what that was. So it sounds to me like Spirit is still very much wanting to lead where this goes. They are not enjoying my logical brain coming into any of this. So you said that you actually sat down and asked them what they
Yeah.
were.
Well, I intended on doing that early this morning, and I thought, oh, we'll think about what we're going to do for the topics, have a look at the questions. I was all prepared, and I had the one of my clients call, and they had a dilemma with a window that they wanted in. It was the last minute, so I jumped in my car and raced to site instead, and got back. Literally, we were messaging on the way back to say, what time we're actually going to be, and so I didn't, and we mixed up our times by 15 minutes. So that gave me 15 minutes to actually go, oh great, where's my notebook that I normally have, my diary, where's my, earphones and all that sort of stuff. So I got 5 minutes to sit before we started, and I did the same thing. I was thinking we're going on so unprepared, but I did realize we had 2 questions from last time. And then I asked for a third question. So we'll talk about that third question when we get through the next two. So just to catch up for those who didn't watch last week's or hasn't, Spirit actually took over and started to ask us questions instead of us picking topics after a bit of a disaster of a podcast and that was unusable. So we are up to question number 4, and it was an interesting one because I let everyone know what it was at the end of last week because I didn't have an answer, and I sit here still without an answer, although as I'm saying that, I'm getting a little message from Spirit of why I don't have an answer. But I'm going to read the question out and then see what you think, Tania, and then I'll answer with what Spirit's guiding me towards. The question is, what's the silliest thing a spirit or a guide has ever said or done in your experience?
It's interesting that this is a question because, just to clarify, this is actually Spirit creating a question to guide what we're talking about. And the silliest thing really was a friend who lost her nephew as a result of a drug overdose. And he suffered a tough life. Like, he had a tough childhood and things were hard for him. And he was a lovely, lovely soul. Like, he was a kind, gentle, loving person, but he just had demons. And so when he died of the overdose, it was obviously very devastating for my friend, his aunt. And he came through and was like in like this field of like grass and daisies, and was like doing cartwheels and being like, look, I'm totally fine, everything's good, look at me, handstands, and just being silly, right? But that is the silliest thing really that I've had. I've had Spirit come through to me and guiding me in my life, and I've had some temper tantrums with them. I have. I've been like, that is not an answer. You are not helping me. That is not helping me. Telling me that all is well is not helping me.
I remember having an argument in the shower with a friend's mother who has passed. And I'm like, I'm not telling her that. So give it to me another way. It was, my husband called out, "Are you all right?" And I'm like, I'm just yelling at my friend's mother. I did say her name, but I'm giving that, not putting it in there. And he's like, okay. So,
Yeah, I've definitely had those conversations, because I remember, when my son was young, I was a single parent. I was doing everything by myself. I was exhausted. I was spent. I was struggling. And, I was working shift work. It was just awful. It was a really hard time of my life. And my son has some special needs, and it was just a lot.
yeah.
And I remember being like, am I going to be okay? Like, is everything okay? And I would always receive this message of like, all is well, everything's going to work out. And it was so placatey that it was just irritating to me. And I was just like, and I would just swear at them. I'm like, everything's not fucking okay. Thank God they love me no matter what, because, oh God, if I'd given them a run for their money. But yeah, I mean, those are sort of my experiences. But other than the cartwheels and that kind of in the field, I don't have an answer. Do you?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, when the question came through, I thought, oh, this is for Tania, because silly's not my word. Like, I don't use that language. It's kind of, it's just, not something that I would use. I'd kind of use funny or entertaining or something. And when you're saying now you don't have much of an answer either, it goes on with pretty much what Spirit was bringing through, and that was that they wanted the listeners to understand that this isn't something about silliness. It's not like there's no silly question and there's no silly answers. So when you're getting things, it's actually seen, don't ever feel like you can't go to a medium with a question, or even talk to Spirit yourself with a question that is that seems a bit silly, like, that's what they're saying, like, oh, I'm not going to ask that because that seems a bit silly, or I'm a bit timid. Or if an answer comes through, they're not going to make fun of you or mock you or do anything like that. They're there to intend to get you onto the right path. And although they are funny, they're using the word for me now, funny, things will come across lighthearted and funny because they're displaying the sense of humor that they had, or the sense of humor that the person has, to make it validate and relatable. And also to deliver some messages that might be a bit easily heard with a bit of humor. But they're sort of trying to explain that never feel like a question will be silly, and never feel like an answer comes across as that they're not going to make fun of you in any way. So that it's quite entertaining, because I really was racking my brains last week to go, surely there's been something silly, like, or, someone silly where I just laughed and thought that was hilarious. And I haven't really. Like, it's been funny, and some of the spirits are lovely and entertaining and funny, but they're not, they're not stupid or silly. I think they're putting silly and stupid kind of in that bucket together a little bit. So yeah, so that's kind of where we're at.
What they're saying, Spirit is saying to me right now, is that there's no expectation when you communicate with Spirit, which is probably why I was guided to share my story where I would yell at them and swear and be upset. There's no expectation for you to show up to Spirit or to spirituality in a certain and particular way, which relates back to a lot of what we've been saying, that when you become aware of spirituality and you become aware of, there's more to life than going to work, paying bills, coming home, cooking dinner, going to sleep, that they don't expect you to be actors. They don't expect you to come living and acting in a certain way. I remember a friend of mine, not so much anymore, not for any particular reason, we just don't talk anymore, would talk about the way that other men were speaking of other women, where they were calling them attractive or sexy or things like that. And he found it very offensive, because he was like, this is just not very spiritual. That's not acting in a spiritual way. But to me, that's taking religious beliefs of this is how we are supposed to act in order to get the grace of God's Spirit, whatever it is that we believe, And they're saying that's not necessary. You can show up exactly how you are, and will be granted with guidance, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you are, which I think is very true, because I mean, look at me. I mean, I'm not the stereotypical medium. I'm not the stereotypical spiritual person. And they just keep saying to me, we're not looking for actors.
Yeah.
We're not looking for actors.
Yeah,
We're
I was
looking for
hearing they don't want,
authenticity.
it's not they just don't want you to turn up. Exactly as you said, they don't want you to come as anyone else but yourself. Like, I mean, they can
Exactly.
see through it anyway. So it's annoying.
At one point in my mediumship journey, because I wasn't really raised Christian, but that's sort of, I always say I'm a Jesus fan. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's quite deeply Christian, and I said, not that I was really torn up about it or anything. I was just asking her, because the Bible has a significant amount of verses that basically say that we're witches, that mediums are witches, and that there shouldn't be anybody channeling information other than what's in the Bible. And this was very profound for me. I said, but what about my gifts? Like, what about the messages that I get? And she goes, Tanya, do you really think Jesus, and who created you, is going to be like, I made you this way, but sorry, I can't be seen with you? And
Yeah.
isn't that beautiful? Like, take that out of Jesus, because Jesus can have a very religious connotation for people. And I'm not talking about a religious Jesus. I'm talking about the ascended master Jesus. They didn't make us this way and then be like, sorry, I can't be seen with you. You need to act a certain way in order to be in my graces. So
Yeah,
I love
beautiful.
that.
Yeah, lovely. All right, question number 5. I'm just rereading this from last time. Okay. It's they were saying that we mention on a podcast regularly that when we're together we have electrical problems, and you might have seen Tanya flashing in and out today for anyone who's watching. Is this a new thing for either of you, or only when you're together, or has happened to either of you before you met? Okay. I can start if you want, or
I break electronic things a lot. When I first started the job that I'm in right now, I was sitting down at my desk. I've had to replace my laptop. I've had to replace my monitor. I've had to replace my phone, like my actual landline. I have computer issues very often. Just about every single time that you and I do a podcast, we have hearing problems, like the audio is not coming through and we've done nothing different. The lights will flash on and off. We'll have the electricity go on and off. A whole bunch of things. This isn't terribly new. It's not the first time I've, affected electricity. I would go for walks and the lights, the street lights would turn on or off.
Yeah.
So
my
not
earliest
new, and it's actually called kinetic energy.
Yeah.
I do find the combination of the two of us more powerful than just myself.
Yeah. My earliest memory is not having electric doors opening. So I'd walk up to those electric doors in shopping centers and they wouldn't open for me. And I would have to wait for someone to get to there and open it. And it didn't always happen, but it probably happened about 90% of the time. And so I got used to it. I would sort of slow down and let someone catch up or let someone open to get in. Because it's pretty embarrassing when you get up to the door and then you go back and then you go up again and then someone else just walks near it and it opens. And I never really understood why. The other thing that used to happen, which I can't wear a watch, my watch stops. And I found out just before my father died that he didn't wear a watch either because his watch would stop. So, and so did his mum, I think. I'm not 100% on sure that, but it's kind of something that runs in the family that we can't wear a watch because we ruin them. But I ruin everything. Like if it's electrical, don't let me near it. And I think I told a story, another one where a spirit was coming in at the granny flat we were staying in while we were getting our floors polished here, and the internet went down and my son was gaming in the other room and he came out and he's like, what's wrong? And I said, oh, I don't know, my head feels like it's going to explode and I can feel the spirit coming through. And he's just like, oh. And so he walks over to to the internet, stands in the middle of the room and he goes, you can break the oven, you can break the fridge, you can break the cooktop, I don't care, but don't mess with the internet. And he walked back to his room. Anyway, the internet came back up and he went away. So yeah, I think it's just high energy that we sort of, the frequency that we are at, that, you know, certain times are worse. I wouldn't say the worst because that's probably the wrong thing, but you're the most issues with electricity when I'm on a Zoom, like that I've had with anyone. Even large energy circles, sometimes I'd have it. I remember when I was on the 1 year course, actually, I had a spirit come in, and the teacher could see him behind me and I could feel the pressure getting higher and higher. And then my whole screen just started flashing. So everyone on the course was watching my screen doing this flashing going. And it was sort of going like this almost pink and then green. And then, so she stopped the talk and was like, what's happening with you there? And she said, you've got an Indigenous elder behind you, and went into that story and gave me a message from him that I was trying to block out because I was on a Zoom. But you do find when you get a group of people together that are high, like that are mediums or intuitives, that the energy raises up pretty high, and it's not uncommon to do that.
Yeah, because you're all holding that sort of mediumship energy. So like when I very first started doing mediumship, or if I mentor people doing mediumship, they're like, why can I read so well when I'm with you, but when I'm on my own, my connection's a little bit weaker? And it's like, because I naturally hold that energy of, and I don't know what else to call it other than like an energy or a vibration that we hold up for the person that's in front of us, which is what you and I are doing, because both of us are sort of, we're connecting to spirit. They're giving us messages as we talk. So the energy is just higher. It's just different.
Yeah. And we mess with things. I think I've definitely broken enough dishwashers and ovens and vacuums, and they work again. That's the thing. They come back on again. Like my husband goes to pick it up a year later to go, what are we doing this? I said, oh no, it doesn't work anymore, and he'll plug it in and it will work. He's like, it works.
Oh my gosh. You just reminded me when I was really coming into my gifts, I went through like 3 fridges. I went to use my vacuum didn't work. I went to use my hair dryer didn't work. Went to use my straightener didn't work. Like I don't recall the straightener. I'm just kind of adding things in, but it was like one thing after another. And I didn't have a lot of money at the time, that I was just like, what are you guys doing? Probably one of those times that I started yelling at them and being like, fuck off, I can't afford this. But everything was breaking on me. Anything that was moderately electric was kaputs. It was crazy.
Yeah. And it's interesting to go back to those times and see what was going on. Like, you know, you often don't think about it at the time, and you come back and I had a bunch of things break at the one time, and I didn't really look back, but they all started working again. Tanya just flashed for those who were listening rather than watching. Funny. Oh yeah, and my mobile phone, that's the other one that shits me. Anyone who actually has a high frequency that you live at this all the time, I go through so many mobile phones. The last month, my phone just decided not to make a noise, so it wouldn't ring. It would go on, and then it decided it wasn't going to go part of the Wi-Fi. And I'd bought a new one only not long ago because the touchscreen had gone on the other one. And then when my husband would use it, the touchscreen would work, and then when I would use it, wouldn't. So we kind of knew it wasn't the phone, but in the end I was just like, I'm just going to get a new one. And it just, you know, and so then I sat and did this like kind of energy healing. I'm like, okay, can you ring? Like, anyway, 10 minutes later my phone rings. So I'm like, okay, so now I'm going to try, this is a very new thing, like over the last week, I'm going to start trying to do little energy healing on my phone, like put almost a protection bubble around it to say, don't mess with it, I need it for work, I need it for we're selling our house at the moment. My agent said, you're the only one who doesn't answer when I call. I'm like, my phone doesn't ring. Like, I've got to sort of keep it near me and check. But anyway, yeah, it's frustrating, but wouldn't have it any other way, because it does mean that we get to work at these higher frequencies. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Now we have a last question, which is the question I got today. So we had 5 questions from Spirit last week, which we got 3 answered, and we've answered the 2 today. And Spirit was just saying that we were to ask an on-the-spot message from Spirit, so something that Spirit wants to deliver to the listeners, and even just a message for ourselves as well, or each other. Usually when you get a message in a collective, it relates to the other person as well in some way. So maybe we can just kind of have a quick think on that, whether you've got something coming through straight away.
Yes, I do actually.
Yeah.
They are speaking about right now being a time to, the word that they're using is hibernate, and what they're showing me is almost like being wrapped up in a blanket, almost like how it would look for a butterfly in a cocoon, that you need to wrap up in it and you need to rest and rejuvenate. And they're showing me taking supplements, taking antioxidants, as well as antioxidants, and you were giving it to me, bring it back. Vitamin D, and that's probably a message for me because I'm in the winter. But it's about hibernating and refilling and they're saying that we need to rejuvenate because we're reintegrating into a different world than was even 5 days ago. So what they're saying is that the consciousness of the world is actually changing at an extremely rapid pace. People are waking up faster, and they're saying that we're the people. Now, I don't want this to come across egoic. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying light workers, people that work with energy, they become sort of the forefront of it, because we will hold the energy, which is maybe why they wanted us to talk about our energy. They'll hold the energy for other people to be able to come and match it. But there's a rest period that we need to just relax. We need to calm our minds, and we need to sort of sit in this hibernation. And that doesn't mean that you don't do anything. It just means that you relax and take stock. They're showing me like, check your shelves, check your refuel, make sure you have everything that you need, because on the other side of it, I'm getting 5 days, 2 months, 3 months. Things are going to drastically change in a very good way, where we're operating within this world in a different way.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that's just a message for me or just a message for you. I feel like it's a bit of a collective message of what's happening energetically, because there really was kind of coming up to this period, this very anxious, like energy where everything was changing and there was a big shift, but they're showing that it comes back and pieces in together, and we just need to rest for it, not because there's something horrific or tragic coming. We just need to energetically be aligned with it and rested in order to integrate it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It was funny, while you were talking, I kept getting a vision of a bath with bath salts going in. And when you did that, when you were at the blank, it was showing me that. And then it showed me really healthy food, like a sort of shopping basket, a paper basket of shopping healthy food. So I think that runs in line with exactly what you're saying. You know, they're not saying hibernate and do nothing. They're saying hibernate and care for your body. Like,
Yes. Yeah. So what message are you getting?
Yeah, okay. So the first line that came through really clearly was always lead with kindness. So they're sort of saying that the quickest way to sort of get back in line or back into that spiritual sort of being with yourself is actually, for your default, is the word they're using, is to be kindness. And if you lead with kindness in what you're doing, that's ultimately what your soul actually is. Your soul only wants kindness. And when we're hearing spirit come through, we're hearing love and kindness. And they're saying for you to get one with yourself, kindness. And they're just going, so that the thing is, it doesn't mean you can't be angry. It doesn't mean you can't have fear. It doesn't mean you can't have negative. It just, what they're asking for is your default. The word that I'm getting really big, is that the default needs to bigly, that the default needs to be kindness. they're kind of showing like a circle of emotions sort of rolling around. But if you always start with kindness and go through the emotions and end with kindness, then you're going to actually come back into the center of yourself, and you're going to come back into a spot where you're in line with spirit again, because spirit isn't negative, spirit is positive. And so even in trauma, we can our attitude or the way we do things can come through as a positive, as a kindness. And so we can be harsh, we can, talk to someone in a way that is not necessarily the way that we want a negative message, the way they receive it, but we can do that with kindness. We can sit in our room and we can mourn or grieve, but we can do that with kindness to our body and not be upset with ourselves. So they're sort of doing kindness, and I'm just asking at the same time, do they mean be kind to yourself first? And they're saying, no, be kind to others first, because that is being kind to yourself. So they're, and they're showing me the circle of kindness again. They're sort of saying, it reminds me actually of a message I got a while ago. Sorry, I'm doing two things at once here. A message I got a while ago, which was that kindness is a gift to yourself as much as it is to others. And Spirit gave to me that a month or so ago, and I think about it every day. And yeah, so it's leading with that. So yeah. They're not giving me any time frames. They're saying now. I'm getting now. Start now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The other thing that they were showing me while you were talking was a very prominent owl. The animal, the bird.
This
the
is
owl.
hilarious. Do you know what happened to me 2 nights ago?
Tell
An
me.
owl flew into my window. A white-faced owl. I've never had it before. I was sitting on the couch at night. It flew in and it stuck on the window to the point I could see the whole wings and the whole face. My husband and my neighbor, we were yesterday trying to work out what type of owl it was, and it was a barn. I'm pretty sure it was a white barn owl, and on the inside of a barn owl, the whole thing of them is pure white. And it just stayed there for long enough for me to clearly see what this owl was. I was home on my own. It was quite eerie, actually, but it felt like Spirit was trying to wake me up. It was saying, hello, I'm here. Like, are you getting the message? And then it went, and then it came and hit. We've got heaps of window, and it hit into another window coming straight at me again on the side. It was freaky. So I'm just sorry to stop you halfway through that, but when you said owl, I was just like, no way. That's too weird.
I actually have this book called Spirit Animals, and so anytime I see like a prominent animal, like for you, if an owl ran into my window or something like that, I would go into the book and I would read it, and usually it's fairly accurate, but what they're coming through with is just this wisdom and this wiseness of what we know to do. So the owl is what they're showing me, is that it represents that. If I had my phone with me, I would actually read this to you, but maybe we can post it to the Facebook page. The like if an owl shows up, it means this. But
yeah, my girlfriend looked it up yesterday, and she was saying, because I said to her, I just feel like it was telling me, like, to stop and listen, and you know what you're doing. Like, it was definitely a thing of wisdom for sure, and assurance that I'm in your face, I'm here. And especially because I was on my own too, it was a really good thing. I had just got a message earlier that day about that once you realize that Spirit is with you, you're never alone. And a lot of people at the moment are really experiencing loneliness, and it was kind of that you're never alone. And so I sort of took it a little bit of that being that, here is your spirit animal right in front of your face. And my girlfriend is big on white feathers, so it was interesting. It came on pure white. It was like literally my hair color, white at the window in the middle of pitch black night. And yeah, but she was saying, wisdom. So she looked it up, and she said there's a couple of different meanings, but the one that stood out for her straight away was the word wisdom when she pulled the page open.
Yeah, and that's what they were showing me, was an owl in wisdom. Well, isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, it's cool.
And that's so cool. Like, you and I are always on the same page. I'll say something, you'll go, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that, or vice versa. Like, it's just phenomenal. But please know, for the listeners, these aren't messages for each other. These are messages for all of you. Obviously, we're going to take a little bit from it, but this really is about you. So hibernate, hydrate, take your vitamins, eat healthy food. Again, they're saying 5 days, 1 month, 3 months. And for this transition to not end, but for the transition to move through. So I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And you know, we get messages all the time. Like I get messages daily from spirit. So know that these ones came up at this time, as Tania said, because you were meant to hear it. So, you know, I always think that when I turn the radio on, or I spend most of my life in silence of other things because there's so much in my head, but the time I do turn the radio on, it'll be interesting because it's often, you know, a line or that I needed to hear, or a song I needed to hear, and so I always know that I was in that space, or meant to listen for a reason. So if that feels like it resonates with you, those messages, know that they were partly for you as well. So yeah.
So
cool.
I was just asking spirit right before we end here, because we're a little bit behind on posting. So like this isn't coming out on exactly December 5th, 2023, which is when we're recording. So I was saying to them, how does that timeline work? And they're saying that if somebody's perhaps listening to this like months from now, the timeline is still going to exist for them. So when they come across this message, that timeline is going to exist for them. So it's not like, oh, I missed something, I forgot to hibernate. It's, you know, it's nothing to worry about. But for the ones that are going to be listening to it almost more in real time, it's from here out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hearing that as well. I think even if you listen to it in 3 years' time, and it's relevant to you now, to when you're listening. So very good. Wow, that went really quick again. We always seem to go so fast.
It did. It's always such a pleasure to chat with you, Nettie. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for listening. I hope that your 5 weeks, 1 month, and 3 months lines up beautifully for you. Please like and subscribe. And 2, if you guys could please leave a review on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever it is that you're using, just so that we can be awesome. And
no, it's nice to hear back. Yeah.
Please, thank you.
All right, see you later.